Hey, AfterBuzzers. If you didn't know, it's Kevin Undergaro, the executive producer of AfterBuzz, along with my partner, Maria Menounos.
Hi, everybody.
And Maria and I, as you know, have put so much time and money into the AfterBuzz TV product and really haven't seen a lot in return.
Nope, not yet.
But one of the ways you guys can actually help us is by tuning into our new reality show, Chasing Maria Menounos. It premieres Tuesday, March 18th, 10 o'clock, 9 p.m. Central, and features me and Maria basically bickering, fighting.
No, it's not just bickering and fighting. You get an inside look into my life, behind the scenes.
You'll also get a behind-the-scenes look at AfterBuzz.
It's really funny. It's not just bickering, and it's not fake either. So that's actually something to think about.
It's definitely not fake. But please tune in to Chasing Maria Menounos on Oxygen, Tuesday, March 18th at 10 p.m. All of your support will help AfterBuzz because Maria certainly won't.
So rude.
You're listening to the AfterBuzz TV network, now the largest new media platform on the web, and your #1 source for after-show entertainment.
Very good, Keith Johnson.
From the AfterBuzz Studios in Los Angeles, California, presented by Maria Menounos and streaming live thanks to Akamai Technologies.
This is AfterBuzz TV's House of Cards After Show.
We'll break down tonight's episode and get you all the latest news and gossip. And now, another post-game wrap-up show for your favorite TV show.
It's AfterBuzz TV's House of Cards After Show.
Good afternoon, good morning, good evening, AfterBuzzers, and welcome to the 5th episode of Netflix original series House of Cards entitled Chapter 18. I'm your host, Thaddeus Massey, and joining me today is...
So, hi, everyone. I'm Sofia Stanley.
Hey, guys. I'm McKay.
Yes. Emma Kay, Sofia Stanley, Thaddeus Massey, here to discuss this episode. And coming off a very eventful episode, Chapter 17, with all the goodies that happened last week, or last episode, I should say, it was, I like how the writers are setting up. It's like they're setting up what's going to take us into, I guess, the rest of this season. And it seems as if it's just basically they're giving us an opportunity to see how Frank is going to manipulate something, giving Frank another tool to take his life to the next step, as he's so good at, as we can see. The guy is a master manipulator and a subway train killer. So let's talk about the situation with the bridge and this refinery situation. We have Tusk that's coming back into play, and there is a Chinese Tusk known as Fang, who's a billionaire worth more than Tusk. But he actually seems to have some character flaws, or reported character flaws, based on him being brought up on corruption charges, which is he's been able to avoid conviction in China, but is punishable by death, lethal injection in that country. Ouch. So Frank has been commissioned by the president to handle the situation, and the talks with China haven't gone well. America has basically filed suit with the World Trade Organization against China, and
for currency
manipulation. Exactly. Thank you, Sofia. And of course, they don't like this, but Fang is not wanting the suit to be pulled because it benefits him business-wise.
Well, also, too, though, I think it benefits him business-wise, but again, piggybacking off something that Emma said last episode and something that kind of a thread throughout House of Cards is old school versus new school.
Right.
So I felt as if, even though it may have benefited Fang basically was saying, China has to basically come into the new world. And if part of coming into the new world is a free-floating currency, we have to be behind that, because we need to basically be able to play and interact with all of our consumers, right? We need to be in an open economic setting.
Right.
However, in order for us to do that, because of the how do we even say, the cultural dynamic of China not wanting to seem submissive to the West and or primarily the United States of America.
Right.
The best way to do that is basically for it to seem as if the United States pushed them and forced them into basically a free-floating currency.
Right.
So basically what he's saying is, okay, cool, like I actually don't want you to drop this lawsuit because that will put pressure on us. In order for us to engage with you and the rest of the world, we will have to drop this and move forward.
Right.
Frank basically seemed as if he agreed. You know, they kind of went over page 4, which was
right.
that. They went over page 6, which was the bridge. Fang made it very clear that the two are connected.
Yes.
And Frank went a complete opposite way.
Right.
So I think that in that moment, Fang was really representing, quote unquote, the new school and or new China and not necessarily old China, even though he refers to old China a
Right.
lot.
But, you know, at the same time, I think Frank is trying to discredit Tusk because
Definitely.
he's not stupid. He knows where this is coming from and who it's going to benefit and why they're doing what they're doing. So he's playing it around to present it in a way to the president to discredit Tusk. But I think he, you know, what we see in the beginning of the episode, and Frank doesn't know, this guy is, I think, pretty dangerous, probably more dangerous than Tusk.
Okay, let's talk about.
I know where you're going because I'm like, I don't understand why it was there, but go ahead.
No, I understand why I was there.
Oh,
Let's
you
talk
might
about
just
the
his character.
opening scene. Let's talk
Okay.
about the
That's-
opening
that's my
scene
point.
because that opening scene was so telling about this guy's character. That it was a complete character establishment about what pleasures him.
And
If you see how and what manner he didn't have a wife there, or even if it was a mistress, he wasn't like, it was total like bondage, submission, suffocation, like on some straight, what is that called? S&M?
Asphyxiation.
Asphyxiation fetish or whatever it
had to
is.
look it up.
Right. And he likes to swing both sides of the fence. He's a switch hitter. He likes females and males. You know, so he likes it rough.
And that's why I'm saying he's very dangerous because of what he says at the end of the episode, that, you know, death doesn't scare him. It actually turns him on to pursue and to try everything there is.
I agree with you both, but this is happening to me a lot this season. Why does Frank like to F with people? Do you know what I mean? Like, no, but seriously, like, can't Frank just one time take a win? Can't Frank just go in somewhere and be like, okay, cool, you said to do this, I'm going to do this, whatever. Let the president be like, oh, great job, Frank. And then the next time, maybe go head-to-head with Tusk. So if it's telling, right, that he basically enjoys pain, he's not fearful of it, that's showing to us as the audience that he, on some levels, is a good adversary, right? Because the whole thing is in a reenactment, the South versus the North.
Right.
I still can't figure out who's who in the scenario, right? Why does Frank continue to cause chaos? We've talked about it before.
Because, as you could see from the prior episode, everything has to do with what, you know, especially in politics, everything is tied to whatever happened before. We could see with the education bill, the people you deal with, everything is connected in one way or another. So I think with Frank, it's like, if I don't take them down now, it's going to be twice as hard if I let it go on and grow.
And he has to continue to cause chaos.
And I think he's also seen that with Zoe. So, you know, when he should have cut that out, and when Claire was telling him, you know, can you handle this? Do you have a handle on it? And he was like, yeah, I got it. Don't worry about it. But then he saw it escalate into something else that it was unnecessary. He didn't need it.
Just because you're in the game doesn't mean you're playing. And see, you could be in the basketball court with 4 teammates, and you could stand in one spot, and it's very likely that those teammates are not going to pass you the ball because you're not moving around and trying to get open. You're in the game, but you're not really playing. So Frank you can't in politics be that guy who's just who's in the game, but he's not playing. And Frank always has an agenda. And so if he has an agenda, and he always has an agenda, then he has to stir things up in order for other people to show their weak links, for him to take advantage of it for his benefit, for what he ultimately wants, which I don't want to spoil anything because I've seen it, but You know,
No,
he has to stir it up.
True, but this is the thing is, and this is why for me the opening scene was a little bit confusing. I actually feel like the opening scene had less to do with sex in a traditional way that we see it, right? So I think, for instance, whenever we see any type of same-sex interaction, we always assume that then it goes the whole other way, right? So that someone is either homosexual, heterosexual, or bisexual, or that we have to label it.
Right.
When in my mind, especially given the reenactment scenario, it's all about war. War makes me think about the Romans, right? So to me, it's all power.
Right.
In the same standpoint that for Frank, and I think this is why they introduced it season 1, for Frank, it's really all about power. It's all about power and love, and it actually doesn't necessarily fit very perfectly into a label of male or female.
Correct.
Right? That's actually how I saw it with Fang. It was simply a matter of power and domination. That despite the fact that he seemed to be the submissive, he was actually the dominant.
Right.
Right? And it was what's more dominant in our quote-unquote puritanical society than to be able to have enough money to get a man to do what a man did in that scenario, and it purely be transactional, because there was no shame attached to it. Think about it, right? And again, this is why, and I don't know enough about Chinese culture to know if this is true, so this is totally, I'm just kind of assuming and or surmising. I'd assume that China is very traditional in terms of their sexual roles, right? Now, not only did he have a man and woman, and he was tied up, and he had a bag over his head, and they both were doing the deed, when he was done, his advisor or his aide came in and he told him how much money to pay them. He paid him. He put his suit on. So it wasn't even as if it was secretive. Do you know what I mean? There was no shame attached to it. It was kind of like, that's what I do. Why? Because I'm a billionaire. I have $50 billion. I can do whatever I want, and there's nothing attached to it other than pleasure and power.
Well,
that's kind of how I saw it.
If you kind of break the scene down, also you can see that when they were performing on him, one of them was always dominant in showing the position of power over the other one. But at the same time, the two of them were serving him. And he came at the same time. He almost died. Like he was about to die. Right when,
and this is obviously an adult show, so if you're not adults, you shouldn't be watching.
Sorry,
but I mean, that's also, I mean, symbolic of, I think in French, what is it? It's literally like
he's pushing
small
the
death.
limit.
Like orgasm, literally in French, I think translates to small death.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
Anyways,
enough adult stuff. We'll move on.
Right. Yes. So.
Move on when you move on.
That was a great note. I mean, that scene, we had to talk about that scene because it was like, wait, was that? Did I turn on a different show for a second? Exactly. But that was just really setting up his character. And you would think, traditionally, like you said, you would think it was about the other two people. And then you realize he's the dude that's in charge. He was the one that was tied up with the bag on his head, but he was the one running that whole operation. So it just goes to show you that everything also isn't how it appears either. Which, let's take it back to his meeting with Frank. How Frank said this guy who's a supposed emissary for the Chinese government, he doesn't know, and they can't go to the government and ask them if this guy is representing them or not, based on the relations right now are strained in this lawsuit or whatever that's going on. Plus, Frank has to manipulate his deal with Tusk and all that, whatever. He knows this guy's in business with Tusk. Okay, big business likes to manipulate government. Okay, that's one of, I think, the overtelling messages of this whole scenario. How big business plays such a major part. I mean, you got this billionaire who's got the president on speed dial, and I need this to be done like this, and I need that done like that, and you should do this like this. Well, what should I do with this situation? Do it like this, but it ultimately benefits his pocketbook. At the end of the day, pocketbook, that's what my grandmother used to say all the time. Benefits his wallet, benefits his bank account, right? So Fang is pretty much the Tusk of China, like I was saying before, and now you have Frank, who has to stir this up, because he has to loosen, he has to get Tusk's credibility broken down.
I agree.
Tusk's credibility has to be broken down. He's been trying to do this. He's tried to separate Tusk, or the president's ear, from Tusk. And this is another opportunity. You gotta remember, Frank is also an opportunist. So this, to say the least, right? So this is also an opportunity for Frank to come in and, okay, I could use this whole Fang situation to use it as a weapon versus Tusk. because at the end of the day, Tusk is an American. He's not Chinese, right? So let's just say that Tusk represents America from the business side. You have Fang representing China on that side. Whether he's really representing China, which I don't think he is because he's brought up on corruption charges. We know that they're doing back channeling and all this other stuff, right? So Tusk, if he shakes up Tusk, if he shakes, it's his way of breaking Tusk down, but he can do it with Fang instead of doing it directly with Tusk. Because Tusk is too close to the president right now, and that he's already catching backlash by how he's handling Fang, and he can't do it directly with Tusk, and he probably knows that he might have to use Tusk or get Tusk to be an ally later.
No, I mean,
so it's better to use Fang as a tool to break Tusk into submission for Frank later.
No, and I totally agree. And I totally agree with you. And I think also too, because what he was doing is he was also highlighting to the president how much Tusk is really involved in politics.
Right.
Because I think the president had previously always thought that the two weren't connected. That Tusk was really only an advisor or a consultant as it pertained to business issues. And I think that it highlighted how naive the president is in terms of the fact that the two are interconnected, just like you said. However, and I don't know why this season I have a different feeling than I did season 1. I still am kind of like, yo, Frank, what are you doing? Like, do you know what I mean? Like, there's a part of me that kind of is like, are you just this ballsy? Are you this much of a strategist? Like, what are you doing? Because there does seem to be a certain level of emotion tied to it. Like, I just don't like you. I just don't like you, Tusk. I don't like you thinking that you ever had anything over me. So I'm really going to do this, not just to separate Tusk and the president, but also because I don't like you.
Right.
I don't like you. And that scares me a little bit. It scares me when Frank seems to be making decisions more out of emotion than out of pragmatism, even though as I'm talking, sound like a hypocrite, because that's always what Frank's done. I just think somehow he's scaring me more lately.
But Tusk has shown his hand as well and what he's capable of doing, telling Frank, he's with him, and then basically turning the story when he's in front of the president. So it's someone that he can't obviously trust, and they're never going to be able to work together and fully trust one another. It's just not going to work, and I think Frank sees it ahead of time. He reads people. He knows who they are. First of all, he's done his research, so even before reading them, going into a meeting, he does his research to see who the person is and knows if they're going to be able to benefit him or not. If they're not going to benefit him, then why waste his time trying to get to know him or play nice to them, which is the same reason he sent Stamper to meet with Fang instead of going himself.
Right.
It was to show, in my opinion, it was to show that you're not on that level for me to come and meet with you. I'm going to be dealing with Tusk on this, so it's me against Tusk. I'm going to be sending Stamper to come and deal with you, which Fang was insulted because, Doug kept on saying, well, what is your message? What do you want to send to the vice president?
No, and Fang literally called him an errand boy.
Fang. Called Stamper an errand boy.
Yeah, so he was completely insulted.
Yeah, I mean,
because to be throwing that type of insult at him, and even the whole thing,
sticking the alcohol in his face.
You know what I mean, making the whatever the drink was and the sugar and and knowing obviously that Stamper was an alcoholic, so same thing. Like they did their research too.
Right.
That's a great point. I think he was very insulted because Frank really was being deliberately condescending and hierarchical in the same point that he met him at first, but then basically was like, there's no reason for us to meet again unless you basically bend to my will.
Well, that was evident later when they met on the battlefield, the reenactment field out in the. And I think it's also interesting that Frank, great grandfather was a Confederate soldier and got his head bashed in with a rock. And that was very interesting. What's really funny is that Frank always seems to me, and I don't know if you guys actually, if you want to call in and tell us what you guys think, you can call in by giving us a shout at 424-256-1729. 424-256-1729. But when Frank didn't get the appointment to Secretary of State, he had something to prove. He was pissed. He had something to redeem. It almost was like a slight of his person and can actually psychologically scar somebody as to why did I not get the position? I'm good enough. I'm supposed to be there. I've done everything right. Blah, blah, blah. Who promised me this? Who did me wrong? How did I not see this coming? Type of thing. The fact that he has an ancestor, and Frank looks into, I don't want to say he's superstitious, but he's into symbolism, very heavily. And the fact that he had an ancestor who died on those grounds as a Confederate soldier, Fang mentions it. Look, your ancestors. No one remembers. What did he say? No, there's no something for the conquered.
Remember, your grandfather fought for the losing side.
For the losing side.
There is no sacred ground for the conquered.
Exactly. That was a very powerful statement right there. But before Fang even said that, when he went to the reenactment field and learned about his ancestry, I felt like he had a bone to pick as soon as he learned about it.
Yeah.
It was like, I have to redeem my family name. Like, he took it to the next level, I think, psychologically for him.
No, that's an excellent point, and I'll let you finish that thought, because he actually even says, he was like, in Gaffney, they called it the War of Northern Aggression,
right.
But I disagree. Like, I take no honor in the Confederacy, especially, like, you should never fight a losing battle, especially to wage war on something so asinine as slavery.
Right.
So, and I think Frank's always said that, like, even though Frank seems diabolical,
right.
He does have honor, and there's certain things that he basically draws a line in the sand. So you're right. Like, he had obviously done his own research, so he was, I think, surprised, that he had a lineage that fought for the Confederacy and then also died in the manner in which he did. So I think you're completely right. The minute he heard that, he definitely went into...
And that's why he had Fang meet him out there. Because it was symbolic. It was like...
That's a great point.
And you got to remember that Fang kept talking about how his grandfather fought in the revolution. And blah, blah, blah. So it was like, oh, okay, let's take it back to the battlefield then. And basically these guys are doing battle. So as soon as everything happened with Tusk in the office with the president, and he dropped a dime on Frank to the president in the Oval Office on speaker, remember? And he was like, no, Frank.
I told you no more back channeling.
No more back channeling. He told Tusk to chill out type of things. Like, no, he's not saying that. That's what Garrett was doing. As soon as Frank gets off that phone conversation, what does he do? He goes and tells Stamper, get Fang on the phone or we're going to meet. As soon as the president told him no more back channeling, that's the first thing he did. And he has him meet him out on the battlefield. And that was basically warfare out there that happened between the two of them. He said, I willed the Constitution of the United States. I will constitutional power. Isn't that what he said?
Yeah. Because basically he was saying, because Frank was basically trying to say that might is right. Right? And that I don't care how much money you and Tusk have, I have basically constitutional authority. I have the entire United States of America. And then Fang basically goes in to basically say, and he brings it back to China, he was like, oh, but Mao had a smaller army, right? And basically, so.
And if you've noticed, I'm going to let you finish that thought.
No, go ahead.
If you notice, when those little things that Frank says, it's as if he is running the government himself. Yes. Like, he doesn't have any superiors.
No, I completely agree.
He says certain things like that, that you would think, if you had never seen this show before, that he was already running everything, that he was the president, that he had all the power. That I have the power. You don't have the power. I have all the power.
If you step back and look at it, he kind of is. Even though he's not in power, he is, because of his manipulations to people, and he still has a foot in the... he's
in the
controlling majority whip,
the legislature,
Jackie.
Congress,
he's able to get his way with the president by telling him, well, I don't want to tell you how to do your job, but telling him the opposite, so the president could go ahead and do what he really wants him to do.
Right.
So to be able to manipulate people to get them to do what you want, that's power, that's control.
And you gotta go ahead, Sophia.
No, my only thing is that, and I don't know why this keeps, I keep saying the same thing. So he's going to battle with Tusk, right? And so basically on the phone with the president after he meets with Fang, basically Tusk plays his hand and basically is like, yo, Fang told me you met with him. And then the president goes, wait a minute, I told you guys to stop back channeling. Right. And then Frank very quickly goes, well, if you told us to stop talking to Fang, how do you know? Because I didn't meet with him. Right. But how do you know that? Because obviously it means you talked to him. And then the president basically is like, okay, I'm done with both of you. Right? Now, and I'm going to go to the conversation basically after, the president hangs up and how, to me, Raymond plays himself. However, I feel as if, why are people underestimating him, especially someone like Raymond Tusk, right?
Why are they
Raymond
underestimating him? Frank?
Exactly. So to me, at the end of the day, the minute you have seen that Frank is seeing your move and raising your move, you need to demolish him. Like, I mean, immediately. But that's not what Raymond's doing. Raymond is stuck in emotion somehow.
Because you got to remember that he's still a civilian, and he's not in the White House every day.
No, I think
Raymond, you think about it, he must have run like a profile analysis of Frank from when he was running for Secretary of State, and that's why he realized that's not where we want you. They then changed positions and realized it would be to their advantage for him to be vice president. Like, he's getting to know him, not only from what I consider to be like, he must have done a brief on him and read about him, so he intellectually knows who Frank is. Now he's actually, from a practical perspective, not being able to figure out his move and then make a counter move. You then either need to do one of two things. You either need to submit or you need to demolish. And it seems as if he's still kind of sitting in the middle to me.
Well,
I was going to say, I think Tusk is underestimating Frank and what he's capable of doing, but also he has emotional ties to the president. And I agree with, Thaddeus. He doesn't see what goes on in the White House and how what's done, even though he talks to the president, but he doesn't see every single move that's made. But Frank does.
Right.
He has people in every single office that report back to him. But at the same time, Tusk, he's in it for a completely different reason than Frank.
Right. Here's the thing. Tusk is a very powerful individual, but his power is in a different sector, so to speak.
Okay.
So, as a businessman, Tusk wants to, or he needs to hold a certain place just so he can ensure his business interests. But Frank has interests elsewhere.
Right.
His interest is in government and wielding a different kind of power, the power of a government, as opposed to business. I think when you have billions and billions of dollars as a businessman, he's probably used to, okay, I'm going to put this piece there, I'm going to put this piece there, I'm going to use this person like this, I'm going to use that person like that. Right. And if he's got the president of the United States on speed dial and he can tell him whatever, blah, 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 I don't think that he's underestimated Frank. I think he's overestimating himself.
Well, and also one thing I do want to bring up is
because he mentioned it. Remember when Frank got the vice presidency, he was like, "Oh, we're very impressed. We know that you're the one that's been." He recognizes Frank's ability. I just think he's overestimating himself as far as.
And he's falling short in that aspect because even though he has the president on speed dial, Frank has an army of soldiers that are. That will do what he says.
FBI.
And Tusk doesn't have that. He's a one-person, show, one-man show.
That's actually my
Even
point,
though he has money, he's a one-man show.
But that's my point, though. He's the fact that technically his power comes from the fact that he has the president on speed dial and the president hung up on him. The fact that he didn't think about it, he wasn't talking to the fourth wall.
Right.
Do you know what I mean? He wasn't breaking the fourth wall. He goes, "That's the first time in 20 years that Gareth has hung up on me." Why would you tell that to Frank? He just basically let Frank know that whatever Frank is doing has worked. And despite the fact that they have 20 years of friendship, a business relationship, whatever they have, Garrett has never done that before.
Right.
He's showing a sign of weakness, which to me doesn't make sense with the fact that he's a billionaire. It does make sense the fact that they call him, what do they call him, like a backwoods billionaire? Like, he's showing that side. Like, he's showing an aspect of weakness, which in a negotiating table, you would never do, right? So, to me, the first thing he should have done, when Garrett hung up the phone, hang up. Before that even little lady said, "Oh, the president is not now hung up," hang up.
Right.
Do you know what I mean? The fact that you had to wait on the line, like oh my God, is he picking up again? Oh my God, like waiting for your phone to ring. Like, no, dude. Right. And then the fact that you allowed Frank, and I think, what does Frank even say?
It's like,
Frank
Garrett?
goes, she gotta go, yeah, and he goes. Raymond goes, "That's the first time he's ever hung up on me in 20 years." Frank goes, "Oh, I feel for you." Then Raymond goes, "Goodbye, Frank." And Frank goes, "And the butchery begins."
Yep.
That to me is literally and figuratively the line in the sand where he saw Raymond and he was like, "You're weak."
Right.
Because at the end of the day, it's not about business, right? Because in Frank's world, it's all about power and leverage and not about emotion.
Right.
And you're letting your emotion get the best of you instead of making a counter move.
Right. Well, if you think about it, you're like what, one of the richest guys in America. You're a billionaire, one of the richest guys in the world, and you got the president on speed dial. That's as good as it's gonna get, unless, as far as power is concerned, unless you're gonna run for office yourself and become the president. So to have a big chunk of your power all of a sudden be compromised now, and you're like, wait a minute, what's gonna happen? Because basically certain bills get passed that allow me to do the kind of business that I need to do, that gives me the billions, allows me to make the billions that I make. Okay, he's shook. He's shook.
I totally
so
agree.
Tusk is he's
very dependent.
He's made strategy. You know, he's strategized, and he's strategized successfully because he's a billionaire. I mean, he's done something right to get to that point as far as a businessman is concerned.
Yes.
But in his relation to Frank, he's effed up.
But even if you go back and take a look at his family, his house, his office, and his living style,
really
he
simple.
hasn't evolved into the new age.
Right.
So, you know, if you have someone with new ideas, more advanced in technology, coming around and taking your position, your friendship with the president is not going to matter, because at the end of the day, it's what can be done and who's going to prove to the president how it could be done. It's not just your word and that's it.
I think that Frankfield looks at Feng as more of an adversary. He's younger. This dude's worth a lot of money, and he's more and he's more forward thinking. He's obviously shows the difference between the new school and the old school. Of course, Feng and Tusk are doing business just because they both have absurd amounts of money, and it makes sense for them to do business together.
And also, just to piggyback off of your point, Thaddeus, also too, I think, again, they don't waste words in the show, and the fact that Frank mentioned that China has a quarter of the world's population, and then also obviously mentions like might makes right, meaning that whoever has the most stuff, whoever is the biggest, whoever has the most people wins. I think that wasn't lost on me. And it wasn't just that he had to take Raymond down, he had to take Raymond's hold on China down. And if he can't get China, then he needs to destroy that relationship.
Yes.
But he can't have Raymond not only have Raymond's money, but access to a quarter of the world's population and resources.
Yeah. So I believe that Frank sees a chink in the armor for the president with this bridge situation, because his whole infrastructure, I think part of his campaign and his administration is based on this infrastructure plan, and the bridge is a major part of that. So Frank is manipulating, and he's conspiring again. You know, obviously, if he breaks this situation, the scenario up with Feng and Tusk, that gives him an in to, you know, he says, look, I'll take the risk. You know, if it whips back on me, then I'll take the risk. I'll risk that. I don't mind. Like, he doesn't care, because at the end of the day, he doesn't respect Garrett either.
That's true.
He doesn't. He has no respect for the president. He's like, this dude is whatever.
I also think that Frank is extremely dangerous, because for Frank, there's only two options. There's either win or die. And you never want to go against an adversary who is literally and figuratively willing to die for their cause. So in Frank's mind, either he's going to win or he'll take the blow, because he'd rather die.
Right.
Do you know what I mean? Even that's why I think he makes a joke, you know, the previous episode regarding anthrax. Like, if I lose, I'd rather die. Like, he's joking, but he's not. Because he's basically like, I can't face a life or a world where I basically have lost, number one, but definitely to an adversary that I don't respect.
Right. Most definitely. I agree with what you're saying. And to me, it also is a very telling that this attack on Feng of shaking everything up with Tusk is actually an attack on the president, as far as I'm concerned. And it was more evident to me when I watched Claire strategically rope in the first lady with this scenario. And it's like two vultures preying on the weak. That's completely how I looked at the situation. As soon as she got the first lady in the meeting room, after she dimed out the general about what he did, I'm like, oh, this is an all-out frontal
and even
attack.
just the fact that it was obviously strategic even in terms of making her come late.
Right.
Because it's literally like she got them and they thought that they were comfortable, and then it was like, bam!
Right.
Now I got the first lady.
Exactly. Exactly. That's exactly what she did. It was like she smacked them upside the head. They didn't want them to know. She didn't want them to know that the first lady was So then they would have been on eggshells. And also you got to remember that by having her come late and then she's going to be caught off guard. So she's going to be trying to catch up in the meeting, which is how a natural meeting goes if you're running late. And then she's there to support Claire anyway. So basically that had to send them a message that I'm running this. Yeah, I'm not
using Frank's office,
right.
It was just, everything was so symbolic to her point and where she was going with it.
So that to me was like a telling of an all-out frontal attack on the Oval Office by Claire actually roping in the First Lady. And I feel so bad for her because I'm like, oh, this poor lady. She has no idea what she's in for.
But I agree with you, and I don't know why I feel like I'm switching to a certain point because I'm not, but there is a part of me that is. I keep thinking, I mean, other than the fact that they murder and they lie and they cheat, but like, are Frank and Claire so bad? No, literally, because this is the thing is, right? Because at the end of the day, here you have a president that seems so absurdly naive about everything that makes the world run. Right. Like, do you really think that Tusk isn't involved in politics? Like,
he's paying off half the lobby. He's got half that stuff.
And even the fact of he couldn't do what he does without being involved in politics.
Right.
Please get over yourself. Like you think you're the only person he has on speed dial? Like, ooh, you just happen to be oh so special.
Of course.
And then same thing even with the First Lady. It's literally like even the way that she says it, like her whole demeanor and her whole posture when she's meeting with Claire and the head of the female caucus. Like, she's like, well, this has never happened to me, and, like, the victims, and just the whole manner in which she's speaking. Like, you're the First Lady of the United States of America, and the wife of the Vice President of the United States of America said on national TV, which arguably we're assuming that Ashley, I'm assuming she's comparable to, like, Barbara Walters or Oprah.
Oh, yeah.
Do you know what I'm trying to say? It was national news, especially given the fact that it happened during CNN. A potential... Thank you. Capital evacuation. So everybody is watching this. Says on national TV that she was assaulted by a military general.
Yes.
And that your energy in the room is not either protective or angry. Right? That to me would have been either she should have been like, oh my God, I have no idea what you're going through. What do you need from me? It would be a little bit more lean in. Right? Or it should be a little bit more angry.
If we're going back to, your significant other or your spouse as a resemblance and reflection of you, then it would make sense how her and the president would be, mirror images of one another. And she's, sitting there and saying, I don't know what to say. I don't know if I should get involved. And he's doing the same thing. He's letting everyone else run the show.
That's my point, though. Are we then angry at Frank? Are we angry at Frank then for undermining the president? If the president, in essence, is weak, he's weak. He's ill-informed. He doesn't have control over his platform. He doesn't have control over his cabinet. He doesn't have control over anything.
And he's not, how many times have we actually seen him speak and be in the spotlight? I don't think, I probably could count on my hand the number of times he's done it. Most of the time it's Frank speaking on his behalf or someone else. The same way we were never introduced to the First Lady until this season. So it's like, you're the First Lady and we're barely getting to know you in season 2. Where have you been? What have you been doing?
Well, as far as that's concerned, as far as the storyline is concerned, she wasn't really relevant to Frank,
and neither was
he was just a whip.
Right.
Well, he was just a whip, so obviously he was just doing his thing in Congress or whatever. But now that he's the vice president and she's the second lady,
but there's a part of me though that says that if the president's only kind of consultant or advisor is one person who actually isn't part of the government, right? And it seems as if he has no other allies, friends, people he's paid off, whatever the case may be. But you have Frank, who has people everywhere. Should we get mad at Frank for basically being like, oh, okay, he's not an adversary, and therefore I'm not going to treat him as such, and I need to F with him.
Right.
Do you know what I mean? Yeah. Same thing even with Claire.
Yeah.
Should she? Because I think we keep calling them opportunists, right? And we keep thinking that when we say that they're ruthless in their pragmatism, there's a little bit of a connotation of we're kind of being snide when we're saying that. We're kind of being a little bit insulting, that we're not actually praising them for that.
Right.
There's a tiny tiny part of me that's praising them for that. Because if you look at them again as mirror images of each other, you have Frank and Claire who are extremely informed, extremely honest with one another. They have a game plan. They are willing to do whatever they have to do for that game plan. They utilize people. They actually have all their chess pieces.
Right.
Versus it seems like Garrett is literally just technically the king, even though I'd argue he's not.
Right.
And he has one knight and thinks that he can win a war with one knight.
Well, I don't
like. You need your pawns for a reason to literally let them die, so that there's a barrier.
Right. I don't look at them as opportunists. I look at it like they have an end goal already. That we're watching, and they're taking us along on this ride, and we're getting to see what is the end goal. We don't get to talk to them. They already know what's going on because they're in their own world. So it's like an opening. It's like, okay, the end goal is to score a touchdown. Oh, there's a play that's open. The side of the field is open over here. That opened up. Let's take advantage of that situation, or let's take advantage of that side of the field. That's what they're doing, as opposed to being opportunists. Opportunists to me is more like you don't really have an agenda. It's just something presented itself, and then next thing you know, you're just going, oh, I'll take advantage of that, or I'll just take advantage of that just because it benefits you, but there's not really an end goal. It's not part of the strategy or the ultimate agenda. They have an ultimate agenda.
They just have a different way of going about it.
They're carrying it about. They're doing some dipping and dodging along the way, but they have an agenda. And it's, it reveals itself by the end of the season, but they definitely have one. And we started with last season. We started with that agenda.
That's true.
Last season, as far as I'm concerned. As far as you're talking about him having people everywhere, we see that he's got people everywhere. We got Stamper. Stamper's, assigning FBI agents to set Lucas up.
Yeah.
And if Lucas was smart, he would just take his butt home.
Not an FBI agent. Now he's like the head of cyber terrorism.
Yes.
Right.
But go ahead. Sorry.
Yeah. So wait, was he an FBI agent?
Yeah. And then Stamper promoted him so that he could then go after Lucas. Like, he's like, oh, it would be really hard for me to do. I need more manpower. I'm really tired of being FBI. I've been here for a long time.
I remember that. You're right.
And because, what's his name? The guy that's helping Lucas, or trying to use Lucas.
Yes, I know. It's Gavin.
Gavin.
When Gavin, tells him, really, we don't need to use him, and he says, no, he's a cyber terrorist,
right.
So we do need to take care of it.
No, but you're right. He has Doug. He has Catherine Durant.
Right.
He has Jackie. He has Remy, even though Remy's not government, but Remy is government.
Remy.
Do you know what I mean? Let alone, you could say he has Womack. He has, right? Womack is the head of the Black Caucus.
Yep.
Mitchum, let alone
he has
people
a little
we don't
army.
even know.
Yeah, he has a little army.
Yeah.
And he's got a hot chick to go to bed with who's a queen, just like on a chessboard.
Oh, no, I'll talk about that later. I'm going to talk about why they... Anyways, I'll talk about it now. Because again, just remember what I said about sex and power.
Yes.
And to me, why it seems like they're not as intimate as you think.
Yes.
Because I think it's more from a place of respect than lack thereof.
I feel like their sex is their cigarette time that they share with one another.
Completely.
That's them having sex with one another.
Well, I don't like to smoke. I like to actually have sex. Okay? So where can we find you guys until next episode?
You can find me on Twitter at Sofia Stanley.
You guys can find me on Twitter and Instagram, Real Emma K, and also GQJedi.com.
You can find me on Twitter and Instagram at Club Thaddeus and GQJedi.com. Until next time, AfterBuzz.
From executive producers Maria Menounos, Kevin Undergaro, Phil Svitek, and the entire AfterBuzz TV staff, we would like to thank you for listening to the AfterBuzz TV network. To watch or listen to other after shows and post comments or questions, be sure to visit AfterBuzzTV.com. I'm Sir Richard Wentworth, and this has been a presentation of AfterBuzz TV.
Buzz you later.
The views expressed herein are those of the hosts only and do not necessarily reflect the views of AfterBuzz TV or its owners or principals.
Thank you for watching AfterBuzz TV on YouTube. For more of your favorite after shows and interviews, subscribe to our channel here, and be sure to share your opinion on the episode in the comment section below here. We'd love to see what you guys are buzzing about. Thanks again. Buzz you later.